Oh, I love this topic so much. So today we're going to dive into what is the shadow and how is it affecting your life right now and what can you do about it? We're just going to dive right in. That's it. So the shadow. Now this is a term that was coined by Carl Jung, the psychologist, psychotherapist. I don't know what his term was, but he worked under Freud and he came up with this idea of the shadow, and he said it awakens in the latent part of your life. So if you're in the second half of your life, maybe it's starting to activate for you. It's unusual to happen before like the age of 30, say, because up until that point, your prefrontal cortex is not actually solidified. So that's the mature part of the brain there at the front. Doesn't really come online until about age 27. So typically, age 30 onwards, you might start getting an inclination that something doesn't feel right, something's lacking in your life. You want some more meaning, you want some, I don't know, like to change course. And some people have that itch and they go on a midlife crisis and they buy the sports car and they change careers and they do some wild things. Maybe they travel the world, and that's all fine. That's all fine. But if you really want to make use of this time in a constructive way, then what the real calling is to start connecting back in with your soul. And this is because in those first 27 years of your life, something called the ego is being formed and developed. And that ego is really just all of the conditioning and all of the messaging and all of the ideas that you've received from your environment up until that point of time. So your ego would be configured by your parents, other caregivers, maybe school teachers, grandparents, things you witnessed on the news, things that you saw in television shows and films and programs, even, the kids in your social class, like how they responded to you. And all of that information, the brain is constantly filtering it through and saying, what makes me feel safe? What makes me feel accepted? What do I get a positive response to? What do I get a negative response to? And it starts to do this like self-filtering. And it says, okay, so when I'm quiet, that seems to please people more. So I must have to be a quiet person in order to be accepted. Or maybe, your school friends say, oh no, my school friends prefer it when I'm loud and obnoxious. So in that environment, you have this quite loud ego and this obnoxious ego. So, you can even have like different egos for different social situations. And that's why sometimes we can feel like we change quite a lot as a person, but really it's just the conditioning. It's just how we've been rewarded to be in a certain way. So anyway, this ego starts forming and it seems to become quite solidified around age 27. But the ego is not the true you, and it's not the fullness of who you really are, because you are a limitless being. You're a fragment of the hologram of the source, of the creator, of the one. And so you have all of the potential of the one within you. It's just half of it has been suppressed into the unconscious. So your ego is the outward mask, social mask that we wear in order to be accepted by the people. It's also the thoughts and feelings that you have consciously in your head. So there's the social mask that you'll wear around other people, how you've been conditioned to behave in order to be accepted. So maybe by saying please and thank you and being very polite and getting a good job and all this stuff is what the ego loves. But then there'll also be the ego that you're aware of in your mind that you don't tell people about, and that be all of your judgments, all of your criticisms, all of your envy, your admiration, all of that good stuff that like bubbles under the surface. But you're aware of it, it's there, maybe it's a bit toxic, but you don't tell anyone because obviously it's not socially accepted. So that's the stuff you're aware of. But then the shadow is everything else. It's everything that's been suppressed, repressed, ignored, forgotten. It's like been locked away in a chest inside your mind, and you've thrown the key into the deep ocean and just hope that it never gets seen again. That's what the ego hopes. But soul knows that there's something more, and it starts knocking and saying, let's go and have a look. And so you can have that, you can go away and have a look. You can actually explore where that treasure chest has been hidden and start opening it up and start reintegrating back into your conscious awareness all the stuff that you are that you'd forgotten. And this could be forgotten gifts that you had, maybe psychic powers, maybe spiritual gifts, maybe things that you saw when you were a child and your parents said, don't be ridiculous, there's not a monster under the bed, now go to sleep. And actually you were seeing monsters, so that goes in the shadow. Maybe it's qualities that you had. Maybe you're a wonderful singer, but your parents or like the school teacher, they hated how loud you were when you were singing class or something. And so they tell you, be quiet, stop that. But deep inside, you still have that potential to create amazing music and sing to your heart's content. It's just you've put it away. And so all these things, and then also like personality traits, maybe being really sensitive is actually in your shadow, but that wasn't a way that you could survive in your family home that required you to be really arrogant and bold and brash, and really that's not who you are, but it's who you had to be in order to get by. So again, that quality of sensitivity gets put into shadow, and what it means is you then no longer have access to that skill or that character trait or that lost power. And so there's a part of you that knows that something's missing, and it's about reclaiming all those things that you are and being able to show up whole. It's about not needing to wear that mask. It's about being authentic. It's about being genuine with who you are and what you want and what drives you to joy in your life. And it's very much, it's like unraveling the herd mentality. It's like being able to step out into your individualized personal power and not caring if other people get it or whether they're on the same page as you or whether they would respect you if that's how you're going to show up now. So it allows so much more freedom because you release those social chains of fear of being abandoned or rejected or, being criticized by your loved ones. Integrating the shadow allows you to release those fears and just step into your true personal power. So it really is the hero's journey, because it can be quite shocking. It can send shock waves through your social circle when you start to do this work, because you will start to, as you integrate that shadow, you will naturally start to show up differently. Your energy, your vibration, it will become so much more positive. And I don't know if you've heard that story about fishermen. They don't need to put the lid on the bucket of crabs, because if one crab tries to rise out of the bucket, the other crabs will just pull it back down. And I very much see that that's how egos are in society, that one ego sees another ego breaking free of the chains and becoming part of their soul again. And all the other egos, they get a bit irked by this and a bit scared themselves because they're seeing it from their perspective. They're projecting their own fear into your personal transformation and saying, oh, I could never do that. So they pull you down with them. But being able to integrate the shadow allows you to release the fear of that happening and just stand in your own power. And actually, what I tend to find happens is the other people do actually accept that transformation. It might just take them like a little bit of time to accustom to it. And if they don't accept it, then were they really the right people for you? Because really you were with that person based on that false mask, that false persona. And so it allows you to open up new opportunities for deeper connections and more genuine connections, more loving and happy and authentic connections built on shared interests rather than fear of being alone or fear of being abandoned. So it might take a little bit of time to find your people, but I so think it's worth it. I so think this journey is worth it. So yes, the first thing in order to integrate that ego shadow split is to build your awareness, is to start to become aware of your own mind, your own behaviors, your own characteristics, how your ego shows up today, where it feels scared, where you feel envious, where you feel jealous, where those strong emotions come through for you, whether it's grief or anger, because they're all clues as to where your shadow is residing. It's like those emotions are where that shadow is being activated, and that is an opportunity for you to look inside and find the deeper lesson. And once you find that lesson and you integrate it, then the external world, you no longer have to experience that lesson. So it will just fall away and you'll experience so much more freedom in your life. You'll stop repeating the same patterns, the same limiting behaviors. And you'll just find that new opportunities just open up, like synchronicity will just land in your lap, and maybe better job opportunities will come your way. As I say, better friendships, better relationships, a sense of not needing to hide who you are anymore, just being okay with being you. So a renewed sense of vitality inside as well. And it's just a magical thing to witness, to watch people evolve on this journey. And it doesn't even need to take like years and years and years. I mean, something I hear so often in my coaching practice is, oh, I've done years of psychotherapy and nothing has got to the root of the issue like this. And like we would have worked together for maybe 1 or 2 months, and they can already see drastic changes in their life that up until that point, they'd sat in a therapy room for like 10 years and not found the same level of transformation. Because the thing with therapy is, and I've done it myself, is it's great when you're working at that intellectual level and you just want to understand the situation as it is playing out in the world right now in front of you. But it doesn't allow you to go to that deeper level of understanding and working with the actual energetics, because the whole world is just frequency and vibration. And so if you're not working with the frequency and vibration in your body and in your psyche, then you're not really going to get the changes that you're saying that you want. And that's no fault. I mean, if you've been to therapy for that long, I mean, good for you to keep on trying. But it's not going to give you that long-term change, because energetically you're still the same. The dynamic is still there, sat there. So the shadow, when it comes, it will be experienced as resistance. It will come through as massive amounts of resistance when you try to find that shadow within you, because the ego has still got its stake in the ground. It still wants to be a part of the equation, and it still has that fear attached to it of change. So your shadow will be calling and saying, come over here. This is where life is going to get exciting for you again. And the ego is going to be dragging it back by the collar and saying, oh, no, you don't. So you will be feeling that resistance inside as like a push-pull dynamic. And that resistance is actually a really good sign. I know it feels horrible in the moment because you're like, this feels horrible. Like everything was peaceful over there. I was wearing my mask and everything was calm. And I knew how life worked. Maybe it was a bit miserable, but everything made sense. And now you're getting me to move forward, and suddenly I'm feeling all of these feelings that I've not felt for a long time, or maybe ever. But that resistance is the symptom of the fact that you are going for something you've never had before. So of course the ego is going to find that overwhelming and uncomfortable, but it's actually the sign that your personal growth is happening and is imminent. So it's a brilliant time. And yeah, it's why it's so important to have a coach to help you through that resistance as it arises, because it will happen. But a coach will be able to guide you lovingly through that resistance, because we need the resistance to show us that we are on the right path. And then yeah, you get to have the prize, right? You get to build the life, the dream life, and experience the joy and the freedom, and get the job that you really want, have the friends that you really feel connected to, and maybe even create better boundaries with your family members who in the past you've always been stuck in people-pleasing dynamics or lack of boundaries, uncovering the shadow and working through all of this, because those are the places that the shadow was developed. So when you integrate your shadow, that's when you can then start to step into those relationships in a new way as well, and experience something way more magical. So to overcome the ego, sorry, I'm just reading my notes. To overcome the ego, what you need to do is to find where that split is in your psyche between the ego and the shadow. So what is it that the ego believes and what is sitting in shadow? And then once you've managed to bring those back into balance, then you return to wholeness, because everything in this universe sits on a line of polarity. And so the ego typically sits on one end of the spectrum and then your shadow is on the other end. And what we want to do is bring you back to the middle to find balance and be able to show up in any way that's needed in order for your goal to materialize, or the new life that you want to materialize. And so by finding that balance, mitigating any fear that arises as the ego feels uncomfortable going through those changes, and then helping you to regulate anything in the somatic experience, because the mind and emotions and the body are all linked as one life force. And so the body is going to also come up with that fear reaction, the fight or flight responses. And so you do need to have a method for regulating the body, helping it to feel calm, because obviously when the body goes into fight or flight, that's when that prefrontal cortex at the front of the mind, that's part of rational thinking and allows you to make plans and take action, will just shut down. So obviously if we're not working with the body and we're not helping to regulate those strong emotions of fear that are coming through, then the prefrontal cortex will shut down and then you won't be able to go after the goal that you want. And that is why I feel that a lot of other coaching modalities are not able to help clients successfully traverse the journey that they need to in order to get the goal that they want, because they're not helping with that whole dynamic of the body, emotions and mind in a collective way and seeing it all as one unit. It's almost like we have a breathwork coach over here, and then we have a life coach over here, and then we have someone over here who does energy mastery, and somewhere in the middle is where it actually all needs to sit together, and that's what we do as part of the work together. So that's it in a nutshell. That's what the shadow is, that's how it affects your life, that's how it affects goals, that's how you can start to integrate it, find the balance and create change and transformation in your life. So what was the biggest takeaway for you in this video? I'd love to know. Tell me in the comments below and just have a think and let me know, like, where is your shadow like speaking to you? Like, how are you seeing it crop up in your life at this point in time? And yeah, just let us know in the comments below. So thanks for tuning in and I'll see you on the next video.